everyone. This is episode 6. Can't believe it's episode 6 already. Of Spilling the Tea with FNB. And it is your favorite, Sid and I. Okay, so today's episode is going to be very, very interesting. I wanted to talk about a subject matter that came up in the last couple of months or so in the beginning of summer. And it is about the beers.
The
right?
beers? Are we spilling the beers today?
We're spilling the beers with
The
FNB.
The beers. Not sponsored.
So, De Beers, if you don't know who the company De Beers, they basically are. I'm not saying you. I'm saying our audience. I'm sure you know who De Beers is. I'm referring to Sid for those that are listening to podcasts. De Beers is a company that's been around for quite some time that has dominated in the natural diamond industry. They are basically the, if not the sole creator of the huge demand of diamonds from the get.
They are.
So they started the whole proposal. They started the most famous line that you can imagine in all business that everyone will probably remember from even I think my kids even know it. Diamond is forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
it's extremely an extremely popular company in terms of if you are into natural diamonds, right? So. They used to own a lot of mines, if anything at all. They, at one point, were probably even a monopoly in the diamond industry. They controlled the diamond mines. They controlled the diamond polishing and manufacturing. They controlled the supply, which ultimately creates the demand and the pricing and all of that, right? So over the years, obviously, there are other companies that have jumped in and compete directly with De Beers in the natural diamond space. But that's just a brief history of who they are. Obviously, everything is a Google search away. But that is De Beers is definitely a very dominant company when it comes to the natural diamond space. Now, the reason for this conversation, Sid, is that the beginning of this.
Do tell me.
I will. Now, the beginning of this summer, they basically said that they want to now join the lab-created diamond arena.
Welcome.
Yeah, so which was huge news. It took the industry back by surprise because for the longest time De Beers was against. There's no other way to say it. Was against the lab-created space, saying that those diamonds are not real. It's naturals are the way to go, and so on and so on. But based on what they had claimed, or based on what they had marketed in the last couple of months, is they are now going to join the lab created space, create their own line, and they're calling it what, the
Lightbox jewelry.
Lightbox jewelry, and they are saying that it will not be for the engagement or fine jewelry space, but rather the fashion jewelry space.
Right. So no loose stones. Mm-hmm. It's gonna be set on jewelry pieces, but not rings.
But not rings. So earrings, maybe pieces that you wear to a cocktail party or something like that.
Right.
Something that you want to wear to a nice event, but not necessarily the proposal space, engagement space, and so on. So that's our take on what was the information that was provided online and the research that we did. So today's episode, I really want to talk about it because it's super interesting to me. I mean, obviously we're in the jewelry business.
Right.
If anything at all, we're in the lab created space, primarily focused on moissanite. But again, and I mentioned this many times in the past and in the last couple of episodes, and even our YouTube Geminars and even on Instagram and all that. Fire and Brilliance, even though we're known for moissanite jewelry, the reason why we do that is because we provide options, right? So, but at the end of the day, we do provide all options. Many people may not know we also sell natural diamonds per request. We also make other jewelry rather than just engagement rings per request. The other day, we just sold a men's chain, for example, right? So we do all types. It's about options, but we're known for moissanite jewelry. So when De Beers announced this, it would really entice me to say, hey, I want to set up something, a talking point to talk specifically about this, because it's so interesting that a
Right.
company that created the diamond industry, that was fighting against the lab created space, that is all about natural diamonds, and is now joining that space. So so to that point, I mean, what are your thoughts on it? And I'll definitely provide you with my opinions and my thoughts as well.
Well, they're still not declaring whether or not it's real or fake, right, of a gem. They're basically saying that this is fashion jewelry. It may not be a forever piece, but it can be for right now. And I think that's super interesting because they don't necessarily address this as fine jewelry. They say it's fashion jewelry. And we work with all kinds of jewelry and still call it fine. And I still think that everything should fall under, you know, the Fire and Brilliance umbrella, which is that it's beautiful, it's sparkly, and I feel like I mean, I'm totally welcoming to them to join this part of the industry. I think it's exciting for people. I think that it's coming from, you know, the business side of it all. I'm wondering what this means for them. I'm wondering what this means for the lab created industry, because is like where are they coming from? Is that are they trying to devalue something here, or are they trying to add value to something here, so that it creates more options for people, or are they trying to control the market? I think that would be the most interesting aspect of this here.
So those are great points, and those are my opinions exactly. So it's one of two things, right? So from a let's just take the consumer or the end consumer that's purchased jewelry out of the equation, right?
Right.
Let's just think it from an overall business perspective, right?
Yes.
So what is their agenda? What is their ultimate goal, right? So if we are to date back and go back into the history of things, they've been all natural for the longest time. They've been very adamant about not selling or claiming that labs aren't real. Lab created diamonds rather are not real, right? So now that they're jumping into it and they are investing how much? $94 million.
$94 million.
I mean, that is not a drop in the bucket,
No.
right? So that tells me that they are somewhat pretty serious. I mean, $94 million is not chump change, if you will.
Right, and
so
I think in Forbes magazine they actually mentioned that we wouldn't be excited if we didn't like put 94 million. This is a lot of money.
Right.
So it's not like we're not excited. We're really excited for this project and what will come of it.
Right, but what also takes me back is that they're not willing to call it fine jewelry, and they only
Yes.
call it fashion jewelry. So for my opinion is this. My opinion is that they are positioning themselves into a very safe area. So in other words, if this whole lab, you and I talked about it earlier. We discussed about this earlier. The lab creative space is not going anywhere. If
No.
anything at all, it's growing year over year over year, every
It is.
year, because people are becoming more and more educated.
They've recognized it.
And they've recognized it. So if De Beers also recognize it, then they have to position themselves in a position where if the natural gems or natural diamond business will decrease over the years, the next decade, 2 decades, and so on, that at least they position themselves in the lab space as well, right? So that's a very safe area to put it. But at the same time, a company like De Beers, the amount of resources they have compared to the other lab-created diamonds, if they are to join the business, there could be a strategy as well where on the other side of things is if they control the lab-created space, they can also control the pricing. And if they control the pricing, then they may be able to devalue one product more than the other. So in other words, if they can control the production of lab-created diamonds and potentially devalue that, then they can increase the pricing of natural. So either way, sounds like it's a win-win for them. So in other words, if the lab-created space just takes off in the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades.
Do you think they're like, however they're representing themselves right now, do you think that is subject to change? Do you think that fashion jewelry will soon become fine jewelry for them?
I think anything is subject to change. I think businesses over time have to evolve. It's you must adapt or die. I mean,
Right.
that's just like anything else. Evolution is part of human life, and businesses are the same.
Deep.
And businesses are the same. So, for example, I hate to use this as an example because I grew up going to Toys R Us, right? And I still remember the theme song. It's playing the jingles in my head right now, just saying, thinking about it. I'm a what is it? Hold on.
Copyright issues?
Yeah, I'm not gonna. But anyway,
Imagine.
yeah, just
Use your
imagine it,
imagination,
right?
people.
So, with that said, they, I think, underestimated the power of e-commerce. Big businesses that are now very big, such as Amazon and other big e-commerce sites that sell toys, completely took them out of business, right? So
Yeah.
if there's anything to learn from that, then De Beers has to see the writing on the wall that the lab created space is also emerging. Hindsight is 2020, so there's no way they can predict the future and forecast that, hey, eventually labs will take out natural. There's just no way of doing that. But they're positioning themselves to make sure that if that should happen, that they're already in the space, and hopefully at that point in time they will also be able to have a good part of the market, right? So based on the articles that I was reading, the CEO was based on reports and based on specific types of research in the market, he said that there is an emerging market in the lab space, so therefore he wanted to make sure that they also position themselves to be in that space as well. But like I said, it's a very safe positioning for them, because if it takes off, they're already in it. If it doesn't take off, they're still dominating the natural space. So I don't and then there are also parts of the industry, and there's some talks of saying that, hey, maybe they're just in it just to devalue the prices of lab altogether, and so that they can increase the naturals. I mean, I feel like that's more of a pessimistic kind of viewpoint. I think if anything at all, I think it's just a smarter strategy to basically go where the water flows, right?
It's definitely jumping on the bandwagon that is definitely moving, and it's progressing very fast. I feel like nowadays millennials, that's all they're looking for, is to find ways to save money, first of all, and to have more of a practical choice overall. That you don't have to look for something that's going to cost you, like opportunity cost, in the long run. You should invest into a little bit more into like building a family, building a life together, having a debt-free life. So I think that's all important. I feel like that's definitely giving people more options.
And everything Sid had just mentioned was previously discussed in our previous episode 3, about our mission statement.
Oh my! If
Right?
that isn't a plug, I don't know what is.
And you're absolutely right, though. I think people are starting to realize that there are so much more important things in life, especially for millennials. We are in a position where experience is so much more valuable a lot of times than material. And it sounds weird coming from me anyway, because we run a Fire and Brilliance, which is a company that sells jewelry.
Yes.
But in my hearts of hearts, I still feel like the experience and the symbolism of it all is way more important than the actual physical item. So I think, to your point, I think that's why the whole notion and the wave of the future is going towards that direction. That labs, it's absolutely okay, right? So the traditional ways of doing things. I mean, there's a huge difference between before the internet came out and people were just over on the phone. Before the iPhone came out and people now are texting. You got to go with the future, where the future is headed. And I think with the whole De Beers situation, I think they definitely see the writing on the wall, and then I think that's the reason why they're doing it that way.
I think in one of the articles also mentioned that the difference for them to decipher between a natural and lab-grown diamond is the inherent value that comes along with the natural diamond, that it's rare and everything like that. But as you've mentioned, there is an inherent value in like the lab-grown stuff too, in the lab-created gems that we produce. And so for those of you that do not know, we've actually created a video for you guys comparing the lab-grown and mined diamond and what it means, and how you can make sure something is ethically sourced. And so if you don't know already, there's going to be a link in the description or in the video somewhere. And Can you briefly talk about that just a little bit? Like how can you absolutely make sure something is ethically sourced? Because I know there's the Kimberly process, but
Right.
how do you absolutely know?
You don't. That's the answer.
Truth,
That's my opinion, and that's my experience in the business. And this is not to knock on any other companies that are claiming
No, of course
that,
not, yeah.
but that's just my opinion. And the reason why I say that is because of this. You can only do it as far as you can and call it as ethical as possible. But at the end of the day, through the exchange of so many hands that comes from the mines all the way to the companies that polish and manufacture it, to the wholesalers, to the distributors, to the retailers, to the actual individual. And sometimes one wholesaler sells to the next, and the next wholesaler sells to the next, and the next. You don't know how many exchange of hands is that
Unless you own the entire process.
Unless you own the entire process, there's no way of actually absolutely 100% knowing. And I think I read a piece in one of the articles that we were going over prior to talking about this, is that even De Beers is not claiming that any of these is any of the
Not
that they're calling it
eco-friendly.
ethical either, because they don't they also do not agree in that standpoint. And the reason why is because, again, it's very difficult. But definitely check out the video. That's a whole different topic altogether. Definitely check out the video on
Yes.
YouTube. It's something that we had gone over on our YouTube Geminar. But the difference between a lab versus the difference between a natural is that one is man-made. It's still 100% carbon. It's still 100% diamond. As a matter of fact, most people, I would say, most people that are not that have not studied gemology, and even people that have studied gemology, unless they've been doing it for many years, it's going to be extremely difficult to identify the difference between a lab stone versus a natural stone. So in today's world, with all the technology, here's my piece of advice: if you are going to invest money into a natural diamond, definitely make sure that it was graded by a professional institution such as Gemological Institute of America. That's the only way you'll know with maybe not even 100% certainty, but with a very high certainty that it's going to be a natural versus a lab-created stone. Because if that's what you're paying for, you're really paying that margin that you're paying, that extra margin, the extra $5, $10, $20,000 to call it a natural. You might as well make sure it's graded to make sure, because there are so many lab diamonds in the market right now that it's really beginning to get into that gray area where how do you differentiate the two? How do you differentiate a lab or a mine diamond? And it's a little scary. I mean, especially from a consumer standpoint. So you want to make sure you work with a reputable source, and you want to make sure that it's been graded for sure. But yeah, I mean,
look for honesty, people.
For sure.
Yes.
Honesty, credibility. Do your research.
Yes.
Make sure that maybe a referral from someone that you've worked with in the past. Make sure they've been around for a while. Make sure that they know what they're talking about. Make sure they understand the subject.
Yes.
That
would be preferable. Yeah.
All right. So, but in terms of the whole ethical thing, that's definitely a very, to me anyways, a very gray area. Very gray area. It's possible. It's definitely possible. But to just take someone's word for it just because a piece of paper has been signed off, it doesn't say much. Not to me anyway. What is ethical anyway? So when you break down something that's ethical, there are many things that can make something not ethical. Child labor, or something that funds blood diamonds, war, or considered blood diamonds, and so on and so on. There's so many things that are considered unethical. So you also have to define that within yourself, like what is ethical to you and what is not.
Yeah, what are those factors for you?
Right, exactly.
Okay, well, is there anything that you would like to touch up on?
Yeah, so in terms of De Beers altogether, I think this, it's just so interesting to me again, and I have to emphasize it only because De Beers is the company, in my eyes anyway, that started this whole engagement proposal, bridal, diamond business.
Right, they coined the standard.
Right, and for them to fight so hard for many years against lab, and now to join it, what does that mean to the industry? And I find that so interesting, because what does that mean to Fire and Brilliance? What does that mean to the moissanite business? What does that mean to Charles and Gavar?
Audience too.
What does it mean to the audience? What does it mean to the consumer? What does it mean to the buyer? What does that ultimately mean? Does that devalue the naturals? Does that devalue the lab? If all of these labs eventually, lab created diamonds and moissanite eventually floods the market, what happens to the value of all the natural diamonds?
Right.
Is that still going to be considered valuable in the next 10, 20, 30 years? So in other words, if you buy a $10,000 diamond today, okay, what will that be worth in 30 years? Right? Before, if you were, prior to all this lab created diamonds and moissanite, diamonds were and still are, but it's slowly changing, over the years have increased in prices, right? So that if you bought, let's just say a diamond in the 1950s, by the 1960s or 70s, it's going to be worth a lot more. But now, who knows? You're buying a diamond in 2018. What will the price be in 2038? Right? So, and if that business will even be around anymore, right? So it's mind-boggling to think about it, right? But then again, like I was using Toys R Us as an example, because I would never thought in a million years a company as big as Toys R Us that was catered to kids, to sell toys and games and all that, would be completely out of business because of a disruptive technology such as e-commerce. Right, like the convenience of shipping and handling, lower overhead, lower pricing, and all of that took the business completely out.
If toys aren't us, who are we? Anyway, sound off in the comments. Sound off in the comments whether you agree, disagree with these standpoints. I want to hear from you guys. To see if you guys think whether one idea is real or fake, or what that means to you.
Right. And please do, if you do have a interest in the subject, or you have an interest just in general. I mean, everything we're doing here, Sid, from the get-go, is to provide as much value to our audience as from people that want to buy jewelry, from people that don't know if they should invest $10,000 on a diamond ring versus $1,000 on a moissanite ring versus $5,000 on a lab diamond ring. This information is for everybody. And or even for the hobbyists, or even for jewelry business owners that may be following our content. This is just talking points and thoughts that people should be thinking about. And so if you do have a thought or a comment or something like that, definitely leave a comment. We do our best here to respond back to everybody as quickly as humanly possible, so that the conversation stays alive, right? So especially in this business, I mean, I love the business. It's been an honor being in the business for this long, but I think this event, it's super interesting as to what will happen the next year, 2 years, 3 years, and I'm really curious to know what De Beers will be doing about that.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so with that said, everybody, if you've been tuning into podcast, thank you so much. This is episode 6, right?
Yeah.
I believe 6.
Yeah.
Episode 6. And if you've been following us on YouTube with Spilling Tea with F&B, obviously you're able to see the visual of it. And if you are a podcast listener and you want to be able to kind of just see, who we are, what we do, the whole idea of everything we're doing here is not only to talk about talking points and to be able to answer our customers and clients' questions, but at the same time to be able to talk about the industry altogether, just as a whole, as a culture, as an industry, and anything like that, just to provide as much value to you as possible. And I think what we're doing here is something special. Sid and I talk about.
I think so.
Sid and I talk about it all the time, and we really enjoy doing this for everybody. But definitely hit the like button, leave a comment below, subscribe to our channel if you've seen us on YouTube. Again, IG, Instagram, at Fire and Brilliance.
Make sure you follow Michael as well. He posts sneak peeks that I do not post on Fire and Brilliance, our main page, and follow along with his journey. Sometimes he posts things like about his personal life. Like Linda's birthday is actually coming up right after mine. So what are you guys doing?
So, so Linda and I, we are taking the kids down to Carlsbad, to Legoland. Okay.
The town
where I studied at GIA. And as a matter of fact, when I was at GIA, I used to see Legoland across the street all the time. So now we're actually taking the kids there. We're going to spend there for a day, and then we're going to spend some time up in Orange County for a bit, just to hang out before the kids go back to school. and
Nice
then
little getaway.
little getaway. And Linda loves spending time with the family, so that's.
I thought you were gonna say that she loves Legoland. I guess
I'm sure
family is
she'll
very
love
much more
Legoland too.
important.
Yeah, take it apart, put it back together. Take it apart, put it back together.
Really? Is that all that is? Wow.
Build. And so I think that's gonna be a really fun thing, and I think we're gonna have a really good time. Obviously, I'll spend some time with her, and we'll spend time with the family, the kids. And
Oh,
it'll be fun.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you guys want to tune into that, like Michael will probably post some stuff there as
Yeah.
well. So,
Mhm.
all right.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks again, and thanks for watching and listening. Goodbye.